This vision is rock solid. In this box is a vintage guitar. Not one of those ones that costs you the price of a house, but the vintage Vision. And in this video, I'm going to unbox it, I'm going to play it, and I'm going to review it. So, let's find out what you get in the box. Oh, now, these come in a variety of colors, but I've got the orange one. Can I get it out of the bag without ripping the bag? Well, let's find out. Headstock reveal. That is shiny. That's very reminiscent of, say, a Squier Classic vibe. Let's go further. Now I'm getting sort of Jazzmastery vibes. And then if we unveil the body, oh, come on, Andy. Oh, that's a little bit more muted than I was expecting on the sides. Ah, there it is. It's translucent orange. There, what a beautiful looking guitar. First impressions is that it's super light, or at least it feels it. And then we've got a, not fat, but a slightly wide-ish and medium neck. We've got genuine Wilkinson hardware on here, and that looks like a telly switch, but it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 switch, like a Strat, and I'm guessing volume and tone. I have been caught out by that before. This feels like a standing up guitar, almost, if that makes sense. It feels kind of Les Paulish, and the whole body feels over there, whereas an SG feels all the way over here. Let's take a look at the back. We've got a bolt-on maple neck. The body is Okume with full binding on the body and indeed on the neck. The fretboard is Jatoba, bound with block inlays. We've got a little tag here which assures me that this is a Graphtec Newbone XB nut. So it could be a vegan guitar, I don't know. The headstock is it's the standard vintage sort of Strat headstock. We've got vintage tuners, which, well, no, sorry. They're not vintage. They're not locking. They look vintage on the back. They're the Wilkinson Deluxes. And on the headstock, it's designed in the UK by Alan Entwistle, which indeed features his pickups. These are the Astrosonic pickups. And I can't believe I've made it this far in the video without saying this is clearly a Brian May Red Special inspired guitar. It's not a Red Special copy, but these sort of trisonic style pickups are very Brian May. The body is also reminiscent of the Brian May Red Special, the old lady, but you don't have a trem system. You do, however, have the trisonic spring cavity, which give it that sort of stratty, kind of built-in spring reverb trem sound without actually having a trem. So let's tune it up and see how the tuning experience is. I don't know what strings this has on it, but they're good strings. They're nothing that needs to be changed out as soon as you start playing the guitar. The tuners are fantastic, as they should be, being Wilkinson hardware. However, in tuning it, I noticed that this sits so far that way, it feels really weird. So I feel like if I compare that to, I don't know, like to a Strat, here's a Strat. The neck, or it sits more that way, can you see? So these have the same scale length necks. They're both 25.5-inch scale necks, and they're both on my knee, yet the nut, check out where the nut is much closer to me than the Strat is, which is going to take some getting used to. But I'll manage it. I did a little bit of setup on it because the intonation was out just a little bit on the low E, and that would bug me and probably get lots of comments about the guitar being out of tune. So I just did a little adjustment, but generally speaking, from a factory guitar, which is what this is, it's not been set up, it's just come to me straight out of the box. It's pretty darn good. It's probably as good as it can get without having some attention to it. Let's hear what it sounds like through the Boss Katana. There's a lot to unpack there. If you're looking at this thinking that these are single coils and therefore they must sound like a Strat, it's not. These, if they're based on the Trisonics, which they must be, they're super fat, thick sounding pickups, and that doesn't sound like a Strat at all. That's more telly than Strat, which might lend itself to the fact that it's got a half telly bridge on it. It's just, I'm having trouble finding out what it is. Maybe you can let me know in the comments. It is a rock guitar though, so let's find out what it sounds like on the rock setting of one of the rock settings of the Katana. That is thick and aggressive and clear at the same time, and it's also not forgiving. So it's exactly what Alan Entwistle says they are, and they're sort of pickups that retain their clarity while still sounding fat. I dig it. That's a rock and roll guitar. Let's go through some more settings. I've got some pedals on a board here. Let's see what we can do. Let's put that compressor on. That sounds great. That's funky as heck. What about middle position? Problem with that is it's hard to stop once you start getting in the funky rhythm. So it does that rock really nicely. The clean I'm not convinced with yet, but that funk is great. Let's see if we can do some sort of John Mary kind of thing. In fact, let's change over to the Fender Deluxe Reverb. That'll give us some nice reverb. There's a little bit of buzzing going on from the strings. I think the action needs to be adjusted again, but that's a setup. It needs a setup. I think that sounds great. And I'm confused a little because I see 3 single coils and I think Strat. And then I realised they're Trisonic style, so I think Brian May. But it's actually quite like a telly in all of its... It might be obvious to you, but the more I look at it, just looking on the monitor over there, it's very clearly more telly-inspired than anything. If we have another look at the shape, there's a lot of high-fret access at the dusty end. And I don't generally tend to go up there, but if that is your sort of playing style, you're going to have loads of space up there. But I do keep hitting myself in the groinal area because it's over that side. Let's go for the Panama, which is a sort of EV8 sort of sound. highest of gain sounds you've ever heard on YouTube, but it is something that I think still sits within the realm of classic rock. It's really bright. I had to back off the tone there, so let's just put it in clean and just play back with the tone knob for a moment. Let's choose a nice chord. Let's do some drop D. I gotta say, I've only tuned this guitar right at the beginning, and not many guitars make it to this point in a video with me, and I don't have to retune them. But it's still perfectly in tune. If this were a trem bridge, I don't think that would be the case, because I've been ragging on this quite a bit. But that stays in tune marvelously. Well done, Vintage, and Wilkinson, of course. This is so alien to me that I'm almost more interested about what's going on inside the guitar than I am outside of the guitar, which is almost, I said, or equally. I'm equally as interested as I am to playing it. It's a very cool guitar to play, but I think it also might look cool inside. So if you're into guitar guts, this is the part of the video for you. So here's the close-up, and we'll go straight into the control cavity first. What have we got? We've got large pots, but no branding on them, but they feel amazing. That taper's wonderful. Wiring is standard, as you'd expect. That's a 5-way standard Strat switch, but it feels lovely and clicky. And there's no noise in between switches either, which you sometimes get on lower priced switches. Nothing to shout about the capacitor, but there's nothing wrong. Everything looks, there's quite a lot going on in there, but everything looks like it should. I'm happy with that. Let's see if I can get the pick guard off without removing the neck. No, I don't think I can. Okay, it's time to remove the neck. There she blows. Right. Over you come. Come on, control cavity. I should have put that back in, really. Sorry. Right, don't damage the guitar, Andy. Here we go. Right. Neck is popping off. Oh, there's a little shim in there. A little cheeky shim. Nice to see they paid attention to that. And then what are we getting under there? A big old swimming pool. And then look how big these pieces are. They're huge. If you compare that to a normal Strat, you'll see that these are much bigger. And that's something to do with the fat sound. And then there's our Telly bridge. Wilkinson, of course, written just there. Right, I'm going to pop that neck back on, and then we'll have a look at the cavity in the back. Right, let's get this open. Let's try and get it out. Hang on. Oh, it comes out. Yes! Look how big that is. Hang on. Here's a pick. And that's how big the spring is. They are huge. Not unlike Brian May's Red Special with the motorcycle springs in them. So that's the sort of sound you're getting added. Also, I wonder if it's chambered. Oh. I don't think it is. So now that it's back together, let's do the strap test and see if this thing is neck heavy or body heavy or just uncomfortable. Because one of my gripes I have with this guitar is the way it sits on my leg. So here we go. No, that is perfectly acceptable. It's quite low on that strap, but let's bring it up a little bit. There we go. So if you're going to have it sort of mid-waist height, belly height, then it would be fine. That's a lot better positioning than it is when I'm sitting. So it's there. And when I'm sitting, it's here. And that feels weird. That feels perfect. I feel like I should have done this video standing up, but then the whole video would be me like this. And, you know, I want you to see the hair. This Vision is one of the Revo series from Vintage, and Revo stands for Retro Vintage Original. And if this guitar is anything, it's original, because the whole Revo series is kind of like the Fender Paranormal, Squier Paranormal series, where they put things together that weren't originally together. So, you know, Telly Bridge, Brian May Trisonics, some motorcycle springs in the back, and a sort of Jazzmaster neck. It's not it is a vintage neck, but it's more Jazzmaster because of the blocks and the binding. And then we've got a 5-way switch, which again is taking from the Strat, and it's all kinds of things melded together. And I'm very clear that there are very few guitars on the market that look like this. And if you don't like this color, there's the black one and the sunburst one. I just went for this because I thought it would pop, and it certainly does. Sound-wise, I'm still not sure what to compare it to. Like, I'm pretty sure that's quite Telly-like on the neck setting, but on the bridge, it's not mini humbucker, it's not P90, it's not humbucker, it's not single coil. It's these Alan Entwistle Astrosonics, which are very trisonic-y, I think. One of the best things about this guitar is the tuning stability. This Vision is rock solid. I tuned it once, and that was because I put it in drop D earlier. Playability-wise, it was almost perfect out of the box. I just had some personal setup things with the intonation on the low E and the action on the low E. We've got the compensated saddles from Wilkinson, so it's not just 3 saddles like on a normal Fender Telly. These are compensated so you get better intonation. If you pick one up, you might find that the neck feels a bit weird. It is wide and flat-ish, so it's not thin and flat, but it is a bit wider than what I was expecting from this neck, which, as far as I remember, is a vintage thing. Vintage guitars do tend to have that sort of neck shape. So I'll let you know if I play one in the future that is different. But if you've played a vintage guitar before, like the V6 and the Icon, it feels very much like that. However, the biggest downside for this guitar for me is the way it sits in the lap. For me, it's far too far over there. And if you're playing standing up, it's perfect. But if you're a sit-down guitar player, then you might have some issues reaching up there. Quality control-wise, at the price point that it's at, which I found a price of £449 British, I'd expect something pretty darn good. And everything is absolutely spot on. There's only something I noticed, which you may have seen in this video, and that is that on the back, there's a little black spot that's under the finish. But I don't even know if that's showing up on my camera. I'll get a close-up of it, but no one should be looking there anyway. But that is an indicator that they've let something through. However, everything that you should worry about is spot on. Ultimately, it's something quirky and cool, and you would definitely stand out on stage playing this. I just don't recommend playing it sitting down. There is a link to subscribe to the channel. There's a link to another video, and there are more links in the video description where you can find out information about this so you can find out the pricing in your area. Massive thanks to Vintage Guitars for sending this out for review. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!